Thursday, the 10th of August, 1893. 8 o'clock. The day started with Miss Charlotte coming to my home ever so excited, telling me about how my dear friend Thaddeus had tried to greet her last night. Apparently he had made an appearance whilst she was with her father, but she had been asleep. He tried again later when she got up for the day and so returned with a striking woman in her purse. It made me glad to see that Thaddeus took a liking to her, and that her feelings seemed to be mutual. Most ladies wouldn't be comfortable carrying a rat in their purse, but then again, I hardly knew most ladies, and Charlotte Dunkelheit seemed to be one of a kind anyhow. However, this happened whilst it was still morning and I had not yet finished preparing myself for the day. My mask had still been off, and so I immediately hid myself away from view when she entered. She must have realized her trespass and kept her distance, and patiently waited on one of my sofas as I continued to ready myself. After apologizing, the young woman at one point asked me,
"How did you decide on the name Thaddeus, anyhow?"
I gave out a slight chuckle as I answered, "I didn't. He told me his name." She shot me a mildly bewildered look as though she was unsure if she had heard me right. Yes. I know that must sound insane, but I have found that I have a strange ability to communicate with rats. It started with the responding to my music, but over time, they gave me the secret of their voices as well. Her face was that of someone who was captured by fascination.
That is so intriguing.
You do not think that I'm mentally unwell?
Show me them responding to your music. Then I shall have no issue with believing your strange tale.
I shot her an endearing smile and obliged her request, grabbing a hold of my old pan flute and playing a piece for my furry friends. I gave her the proof she asked for, and Charlotte beamed with excitement.
You're like the Rattenfänger von Hameln.
Pardon?
My apologies. I believe the English version is the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
I'm still at a loss, Miss Charlotte.
The old folk tale of the piper who can control rats with his instrument. Though the second half of the story is quite grim. That is aside the point. However did you learn you could do that?
I suppose I became aware while I was still part of the sideshow.
You were part of a sideshow?
She almost had a heartbroken sound in her voice. It was a very long time ago. But yes. When I was still just a young boy, my father sold me off to a Signora Bellows sideshow of dreadful freaks. Thinking on it now, it was quite the mouthful. I said this with a light chuckle, almost as though it was just one bad jape now.
That's awful.
Who can blame a man for not wanting to keep around a deformed monster that was responsible for the death of his wife? The sight of such an atrocity as I am must have been hard enough as it was.
Do not say that about yourself.
You say that now, Miss Dunkelheit. But you've yet to see the monster under the mask. People used to pay money just to see what a freak I was. I was deemed the human rat boy, a disgusting vermin in the form of a human child's body. The look the woman was giving me was full of so much pity and anger. She looked as though she wanted to reach back in time and strike down the very person who made me believe that truly was my identity. I'm sorry. This is an upsetting topic. I can tell. I should stop.
No, please, do go on. If you feel comfortable with sharing that part of yourself with me and it does not reopen old wounds, then please do continue.
Signora Bello, the man who ran the sideshow, was a rather cold man who was just in it for the money. I cannot figure out who would beat me more, him or my father. I always liked keeping my hair long, perhaps because my father did too, but sometimes Bello would get on my case if I let it call in front of my face during shows. He once grabbed me by the tresses and locks and threatened to cut it off. He said something along the lines of, "You're lucky that filthy rats are hairy, else I would have already cut it off by now." Thaddeus jumped onto my seat and seemed to cuddle up onto my shoulder to give me reassurance. A few other of my ratty companions ended up joining him. I would play my pan flute from my sleeping quarters, which had a funny resemblance to a cage when I was awake late at night. The rats would flock to me and listen. They're actually the reason I was able to get out of the sideshow.
And then you came to London?
No, I actually joined a circus instead. I learned gymnastics and fencing under their care. They were the closest thing I had felt to a family, aside from the rats.
They must have loved having you around. I know I do.
I almost continued, but then felt myself caught off guard and flustered once I realized what she had said to me. I recomposed myself and cleared my throat. I loved being around them. Even after I received injuries that kept me off my feet, they did not throw me into the streets. They took care of me and continued to let me travel with them.
You have been through a lot, haven't you?
I was not sure how to respond. I was not looking for pity, merely telling her my origins. Though, I was surprised that I felt so comfortable doing so. I once had a tail, I rambled instead. Signor Bello ended up tying a stick to it to make it more obvious looking. But it was a good length on its own. I ended up having it removed after an incident that left me with burns. It wasn't my choice. I feel as though I miss it, however. You would think I would feel grateful to be somewhat closer to normal. But it was a bit disheartening to lose.
I'm sorry that happened.
It's quite all right. Like I said, now I am closer to normal. Not like it did anything. I couldn't move it. It was more like a lump of meat protruding from my backside, anyway.
You're not the only one.
She almost sounded choked on tears. There was a shaky hesitation in her voice. With the tail?
No, you're not the only freak in the room.
She pensively licked her lips in a nervous way as her hand found their way onto her choker.
I probably should not be telling you this.
You don't have to.
But I want to. I suppose it would almost be like relieving myself. There is no one else I can talk to about this. I feel like a fake and a fraud. My life feels to be a lie. Even you. You seemed so taken aback that I confessed to being handicapped.
Only tell me what you feel safe with. I'll gladly listen.
You thought I was too quick to believe your ratty communication skills, correct?
I gave a slight nod of my head as I shrugged my shoulders.
Maybe I am not something of this world either. Maybe I have my own unique abilities. Something I can only assume I inherited from my Vata.
The entire time she had her fingers traced along her neck jewelry.
Do you ever wonder why I always wear this? Why I always wear my choker?
The thought never truly occurred to me. I suppose I have noticed that you frequently wear something around your neck, but I always wear a mask over my face.
That's it. Mordecai, it's the same reason.
My skin began to pleasantly crawl with eager shivers upon hearing her call me by my given name. Do you have Scar? Or is it some other sort of deformity?
It's not like one of this world. I cannot even show you if I wanted to. I don't know if I would survive. You might even pass out from sheer fright. I'm the true spook here. I wouldn't be surprised if I had a ghost.
What do you mean?
Mordecai.
She paused and looked around the room for the correct answer.
I have a terrible habit.
Once more she paused, but was accompanied with a sigh.
Of simply losing my head.
She gave out a groan and ran her fingers through her hair as though annoyed.
Did I really just say it like that?
Her face was now in her palm as she took another moment to compose herself.
I wear the chokers and ribbons and high collars as a necessity, not to cover an insecurity. Without one, my head would fall clean off.
I gave her what almost felt to be a blank stare.
I'm not expecting you to believe me, but please do not take this as me making fun of you either.
My head, involuntarily, slowly nodded. I understand. I won't ask you for proof. Miss Charlotte's striking green and blue eyes were holding back tears as she softly smiled at me. After pressing her face against her gloved fist for a moment, she insisted we get back to our lessons and normal activities. How can I not believe her, with such an intense expression that was pasted on her face?